Stop flirting with me, Lucas. Please, just stop. The words hit him like a slap across the face, leaving him frozen in the driveway as Eleanor turned away, her voice trembling with something that sounded dangerously close to tears. For months, he'd been trying, fixing her fence, baking cookies with his daughter, showing up with coffee on cold mornings. And now this. The rejection he'd been dreading had finally come, sharp and final. But what Lucas didn't know yet was that Eleanor's words weren't rejection at all. They were fear. And fear, unlike rejection, could be conquered. If you want to see how this story unfolds, stick around until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The morning sun had barely crested the rooftops of Maple Street when Lucas Reed emerged from his small blue house, coffee mug in hand and dark circles under his eyes that told the story of another restless night. He was 32 years old, though some days he felt twice that. Worn down by the weight of single parenthood, by the endless juggling act of work and childcare, by the loneliness that crept in during the quiet hours after his daughter fell asleep. "Daddy, Daddy, look!" Lily's voice cut through his thoughts like sunshine through clouds. She burst through the front door, still in her pajamas, her wild brown curls bouncing as she ran across the porch. In her small hands, she clutched a drawing, stick figures in crayon, 3 of them holding hands beneath a crooked sun. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Lucas said, crouching down to examine the artwork more closely. "Is that us?" "It's you, and me, and Miss Eleanor," Lily beamed, pointing to each figure in turn. "See? She has yellow hair like the sun." Lucas felt something tighten in his chest. Eleanor Hayes, their neighbor. The woman who had somehow, over the past 6 months, become woven into the fabric of their daily lives in ways he hadn't quite intended but couldn't bring himself to regret. "Why don't you go get dressed?" Lucas said gently, tousling Lily's hair. "We've got to leave for school in 30 minutes. Can I show Miss Eleanor my drawing first?" "Maybe later, Bug. She's probably getting ready for work, too." Lily's face fell, but she nodded and trudged back inside, leaving Lucas alone with his coffee and the weight of his own complicated feelings. He turned his gaze toward the house next door, a modest craftsman with a wraparound porch and a garden that had, over recent months, transformed from an overgrown tangle into something approaching beautiful. Eleanor's work. She spent hours out there on weekends, her hands deep in the soil, coaxing life from the earth with a patience Lucas admired and didn't entirely understand. They'd moved to Portland 3 years ago, he and Lily, after the divorce that had shattered what remained of his marriage to Lily's mother. Jessica had wanted the city lights of Seattle, the career opportunities, the freedom from domestic responsibilities. She'd wanted everything except the life they'd built together, and she'd made that abundantly clear when she'd packed her bags and left them both behind. Lucas had chosen Portland for its slower pace, its neighborhood feel, its promise of community. He'd found this house on Maple Street. Nothing fancy, but solid, with good bones and a yard big enough for Lily to play in. The house next door had been empty when they had arrived, the garden wild, the paint peeling. Then Eleanor had moved in last October, and everything had shifted in ways Lucas was still trying to understand. He remembered the first time he'd seen her, a Saturday morning, unseasonably warm for autumn. She'd been wrestling a heavy box from the back of a moving truck, her blonde hair tied back in a messy ponytail, sweat on her brow. He jogged over without thinking, the way neighbors do. "Need a hand?" She'd looked up, startled, then offered a smile that transformed her whole face. "That would be amazing, actually. I think I underestimated how much I'd accumulated over the years." They'd spent the next 3 hours unloading her truck, making small talk that gradually deepened into real conversation. She was a 5th-grade teacher at Riverside Elementary. She loved gardening and old movies and coffee so strong it could strip paint. She'd moved from Seattle, ironically the same city Jessica had fled to, looking for something quieter, something more authentic. "I needed a fresh start," she'd said, and something in her eyes had suggested depths of meaning Lucas didn't pry into. That had been 6 months ago. 6 months of gradual friendship, of small kindnesses exchanged across the fence line, of Lily developing a fierce attachment to Miss Eleanor that sometimes worried Lucas with its intensity. And somewhere along the way, friendship had started feeling like something else entirely. "Morning, Lucas!" The voice snapped him back to the present. Mrs. Chen from across the street was walking her ancient corgi, waving cheerfully. Lucas waved back, watching as she continued down the sidewalk, then paused to chat with old Mr. Peterson 2 houses down. Within seconds, both of them were glancing in his direction, their conversation dropping to conspiratorial whispers. Lucas sighed. The neighborhood gossip mill was relentless. He drained his coffee and headed back inside, where Lily was struggling with the buttons on her school uniform. "Help!" she said plaintively, holding up the offending cardigan. Lucas knelt and worked the buttons through their holes, his fingers clumsy with a task that Jessica had always handled with ease. He was getting better at this. The hair braiding, the outfit coordination, the million tiny tasks that comprised raising a daughter. But some days it still felt like he was performing surgery with mittens on. "There you go, beautiful girl." "Thanks, Daddy." Lily threw her arms around his neck, squeezing tight. "Love you. Love you too, Bug. More than all the stars." "More than all the stars and the moon and the whole entire universe," Lily finished, reciting their familiar exchange with the seriousness of sacred ritual. They made it to school with 5 minutes to spare, and Lucas watched Lily race toward the playground where her friends were already gathering. She turned back once, waving frantically, and he waved back until she disappeared into the crowd of children. The drive to his job at Patterson's Auto Repair took 15 minutes through quiet residential streets that gave way to light industrial zones. Lucas had worked there for 2 years, and while it wasn't the career he'd once envisioned for himself, he'd dropped out of community college when Jessica got pregnant, priorities shifting overnight. It was steady work that paid the bills and let him use his hands. "Late again, Reed," his boss called out when Lucas walked into the garage. "It's 8:02, Patterson." "Exactly. 2 minutes late." But John Patterson was grinning, the way he always did when he was giving Lucas grief. "Got a transmission rebuild waiting for you in Bay 3. Customer wants it by Friday." Lucas spent the morning elbow-deep in engine parts, the familiar rhythm of disassembly and diagnosis providing a meditation of sorts. His mind wandered, though, the way it always did during routine work. He thought about Eleanor, about the way she'd looked last weekend when she'd invited them over for dinner, a simple meal of spaghetti and salad. But Lily had been thrilled, chattering nonstop about her day, while Eleanor listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at all the right moments. Lucas had watched her across the table, noting the way candlelight softened her features, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the way her whole face lit up when Lily said something funny. He'd felt something dangerous blooming in his chest, something he'd been trying to ignore for weeks now. The age difference bothered him sometimes. Eleanor was 38 to his 32. 6 years wasn't dramatic, but he'd overheard enough neighborhood whispers to know how it looked from the outside. The young single dad and the older woman next door. People made assumptions, filled in narratives that had nothing to do with reality. What they didn't see were the small moments. Eleanor staying up until midnight when Lily had a fever 2 months ago, helping Lucas change cool compresses and monitor her temperature because he'd been terrified and had no idea what to do. Eleanor teaching Lily how to plant tomatoes, her patience infinite as small hands scattered seeds everywhere except where they were supposed to go. Eleanor bringing over dinner on nights when Lucas worked late, never making a fuss about it, just leaving containers on the porch with brief notes. What they didn't see was how Eleanor made him laugh, really laugh, for the first time in years. How she challenged him in conversations, pushing back on his assumptions, making him think. How she never once made him feel inadequate or insufficient, even though he was juggling single parenthood with all the grace of a drunk octopus. What they didn't see was how he'd started looking forward to mornings just for the chance of spotting her in her garden. How his chest tightened whenever she smiled. How he'd started imagining futures that included her in every frame. "Earth to Lucas." He blinked. Patterson was standing beside the bay, looking amused. "You've been staring at that transmission pan for 5 minutes, son. Either you're having deep philosophical thoughts about gear ratios, or your mind's somewhere else entirely." Lucas felt heat creep up his neck. "Just thinking." "Uh-huh. Thinking about a certain blonde teacher, maybe?" "Jesus, does everybody know my business?" Patterson laughed, not unkindly. "Small neighborhood, Lucas. People talk. And before you get defensive, most of it's been positive. People like seeing you happy. We're not, Lucas fumbled for words. "We're just friends." "Sure you are." Patterson clapped him on the shoulder. "Just friends who look at each other like the other person hung the moon. I've been married 35 years, kid. I know what pining looks like. Lucas wanted to argue, but what was the point? Patterson was right. He was pining, had been for weeks now, maybe longer, and he had no idea what to do about it. The rest of the day passed in a blur of oil changes and brake jobs. By the time Lucas picked Lily up from school, his back was aching and his hands were stained black despite multiple scrubbings. "Daddy, can we stop at Miss Eleanor's?" Lily asked as they pulled onto Maple Street. "I want to show her my spelling test. I got 100. "That's amazing, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." Lucas hesitated. "But maybe Miss Eleanor's busy. It's been a long day for her, too." "Please, just for a minute?" He couldn't say no to those eyes. He never could. Eleanor's car was in the driveway, and lights glowed in the windows. Lucas parked, and Lily was out of the car before he could say anything, racing up the porch steps. "Lily, wait!" But she was already knocking, her small fist enthusiastic against the door. Eleanor answered almost immediately, still in her work clothes, gray slacks and a blue cardigan that matched her eyes. Her face lit up when she saw Lily. "Well, hello there! To what do I owe this honor?" "I got 100 on my spelling test." Lily thrust the paper forward proudly. "See? Every single word right." "Lily, that's wonderful." Eleanor crouched down to Lily's level, examining the test with appropriate seriousness. "You've been working so hard on these words. I'm so proud of you. Daddy helped me practice every night." "Did he?" Eleanor's gaze lifted to Lucas, standing at the bottom of the porch steps, and something passed between them, a current of warmth that made his pulse quicken. "Sounds like you have a pretty great dad." "The best daddy ever," Lily declared with absolute certainty. Eleanor stood, still holding the spelling test. "Would you two like to come in? I just made lemonade." "We don't want to intrude," Lucas said, even as Lily grabbed his hand and tugged him forward. "Please, Daddy, please." Eleanor laughed. "It's no intrusion. Really, I could use the company." So they ended up in Eleanor's kitchen, bright and tidy, with herbs growing in pots on the windowsill. Lily chattered about her day while Eleanor poured lemonade into mismatched glasses, and Lucas found himself relaxing into the familiar comfort of her presence. "So I heard through the grapevine that you fixed Mrs. Chen's garage door yesterday," Eleanor said, handing him a glass. "She was singing your praises at the grocery store." Lucas shrugged. "Took 10 minutes. The track was just off." "You're always doing things like that, helping people." Eleanor's expression was soft, almost fond. "It's a rare quality. It's just being neighborly. It's more than that." She held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary, and Lucas felt something shift in the air between them, subtle but undeniable. Lily, oblivious to the adult undercurrents, had wandered over to Eleanor's bookshelf and was pulling down a photo album. "Miss Eleanor, who are these people?" Eleanor's smile faltered. Lucas saw it happen, saw the way her whole body tensed, and he moved without thinking, crossing to Lily and gently taking the album. "Bug, we shouldn't look at people's private things without asking." "It's okay," Eleanor said, but her voice had changed, gone quieter somehow. "Those are just old photos." Lucas glanced down at the open page. A wedding photo. Eleanor in a simple white dress, radiant, standing next to a tall man with kind eyes and an easy smile. Both of them young, full of future. He closed the album carefully and returned it to the shelf. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Lily didn't mean—" "I know." Eleanor's smile was strained now. "It's fine, really. It was a long time ago." But the mood had shifted. Lily, sensitive to tension the way children are, had gone quiet. Eleanor busied herself wiping down counters that didn't need wiping. "We should probably get going," Lucas said, setting down his half-finished lemonade. "Still need to make dinner." "Of course." Eleanor walked them to the door, her shoulders tight. "Thanks for stopping by, Lily, and congratulations again on that spelling test." "Bye, Miss Eleanor." Lily hugged her quickly, then ran down the porch steps toward home. Lucas lingered, wanting to say something, but not knowing what. "Eleanor?" "Have a good evening, Lucas." She was already closing the door, shutting him out with a politeness that felt worse than anger. That night, after Lily was tucked in bed, Lucas stood at his kitchen sink washing dishes and staring out the window at Eleanor's house. The lights were on downstairs, and he could see her shadow moving past the curtains. He thought about that wedding photo, about the way Eleanor's whole demeanor had changed when Lily had found it, about all the times over the past months when he'd noticed her pulling back, creating distance just when they seemed to be getting closer. There was a story there, a grief he didn't fully understand. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, his oldest friend. "Still coming to Poker Friday?" Lucas typed back, "Yeah, could use the distraction. Woman troubles? Is it that obvious? Only to everyone with functioning eyeballs. We'll talk Friday." Lucas set the phone down and returned to the dishes, scrubbing at a stubborn spot of burned cheese. Through the window, Eleanor's shadow passed again, and he found himself wondering what she was thinking, whether she ever stood at her own window and looked back. The next few days followed their usual rhythm, but something had changed. Eleanor was still friendly when they crossed paths, a wave across the yard, a brief conversation when they both collected their mail at the same time. But there was a new carefulness to it, a distance she seemed determined to maintain. Lily noticed, too. "Why doesn't Miss Eleanor come over anymore?" she asked one evening, her lower lip trembling. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong." Lucas pulled her into his lap. "Sometimes grown-ups just need space. It's not about you." "But I miss her." "I know, Bug, I know." "I miss her too," he thought, but didn't say. Friday evening found Lucas at Marcus's apartment for their monthly poker game. The usual crew was there: Marcus, Jake from the fire department, David, who ran a small bookstore downtown, and Tony, who did something with computers that Lucas had never quite understood. They played a few hands, the conversation ranging from sports to politics to whose turn it was to bring beer next month. Then Marcus, never one for subtlety, threw down his cards and fixed Lucas with a look. "All right, enough dancing around it. What's going on with you and the neighbor?" Lucas sighed. He should have known this was coming. "Nothing's going on. That's the problem." "You want there to be something going on," David observed, sorting his chips. "Maybe. Yeah. I don't know." Lucas ran a hand through his hair. "It's complicated." "Because of the age thing?" Tony asked. "That's part of it. The neighborhood gossip is relentless. Mrs. Chen asked me last week if we were keeping it appropriate for Lily's sake." Lucas's jaw tightened at the memory. "Like there's anything inappropriate happening. We're friends. Barely that lately." "People are going to talk no matter what you do," Marcus said. "Question is, do you care about her enough to deal with it?" Lucas was quiet for a long moment. "I think I'm falling in love with her." The words hung in the air, the first time he'd said them out loud. They felt both terrifying and liberating. Jake whistled low. "That's heavy, man." It's also been obvious for months," Marcus said, not unkindly. "What are you going to do about it?" "What can I do? She's made it pretty clear she's not interested. She keeps pulling away every time we start to get close." "Or," David said thoughtfully, "she's scared." Lucas looked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean, from what you've told us, this woman lost her husband. That's massive trauma. And now here comes you and your adorable daughter, making her feel things she probably swore she'd never feel again. That's terrifying. Easier to run than risk getting hurt." It made sense, too much sense. Lucas thought about Eleanor's face when Lily had found that photo album, the way she'd shut down so completely. "So what do I do?" "You tell her the truth," Marcus said simply. "No more dancing around it. No more playing it safe. You lay your cards on the table and let her decide." "And if she says no?" "Then at least you'll know." "But what if she says yes?" Lucas drove home that night with Marcus's words echoing in his head. The house was dark when he arrived. His mom was watching Lily overnight, giving him a rare evening of freedom. He should have been grateful for the quiet, but instead, the empty house just felt lonely. He found himself standing in his backyard, looking over the fence at Eleanor's garden. The roses were blooming, pale pink in the moonlight. She'd worked so hard on that garden, transforming chaos into beauty through patience and care. Maybe that was what love was. Patient tending, consistent care, the willingness to see potential even in overgrown tangles. The back door of Eleanor's house opened, and she emerged, wrapped in a cardigan against the cool evening air. She moved to her garden, kneeling beside the roses, and Lucas realized she was crying. He should look away. Give her privacy. but he couldn't move, couldn't tear his eyes away from her grief. As if sensing his gaze, Eleanor looked up. Their eyes met across the fence, across the distance that felt both impossibly small and infinitely large. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Eleanor stood, wiping her eyes, and walked toward the fence. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, her voice rough. "Poker night ran late. You?" "Too much on my mind." They stood on opposite sides of the fence, the boundary between properties feeling suddenly symbolic. "Eleanor," Lucas started. "Lucas, she said at the same time. They both stopped. Eleanor laughed shakily. "You first." Lucas took a breath. This was it. The moment Marcus had talked about, cards on the table. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen, okay? Don't say anything until I'm done." Eleanor's eyes widened, but she nodded. "I care about you. More than I should, maybe. More than a neighbor should. I look forward to seeing you every morning. I find excuses to need your help with things just so I can talk to you. Lily adores you, which should probably scare me, but instead just makes me fall harder because I see how good you are with her, how patient and kind. You make me laugh. You make me think. You make me want to be better." He paused, gathering courage. "I know there's an age difference. I know people talk. I know you've been hurt before. And I know I'm probably the last person you want complicating your life. But I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this way. I'm falling in love with you, Eleanor. Maybe I already have. And I needed you to know that." Silence. The kind that stretches and pulls until it feels like breaking. Eleanor's face was unreadable in the moonlight, shadows obscuring her expression. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "You don't know what you're asking for. Then tell me. Help me understand. I'm 6 years older than you, Lucas. 6 years might not seem like much now, but what about in 10 years? 20? What happens when you wake up one day and realize you're tied to someone who's already middle-aged while you're still young? That's not... What happens when Lily gets older and is embarrassed that her dad's wife is old enough to be mistaken for her grandmother? What happens when your friends start wondering why you settled for someone past her prime? Eleanor, and what happens to me?" Her voice cracked. "What happens when I let myself love you and Lily? Let myself believe in this, and then you leave? Because people leave, Lucas. They die, or they change their minds, or they realize they made a mistake. And I can't survive that again." The last words came out as a sob, and Lucas acted on instinct, vaulting over the fence and closing the distance between them. He reached for her hands, gripping them tightly. "I'm not him," he said fiercely. "I'm not your husband, and I'm not going to disappear. And I don't care about age, Eleanor. I care about you, the person you are right now, today. That's who I'm falling for. You say that now, and I'll keep saying it, every day if I have to." He squeezed her hands. "But I need you to be honest with me. Is the age thing really the problem, or are you just looking for excuses to run because you're scared?" Eleanor pulled her hands away, wrapping her arms around herself. "Don't do that. Don't make this about fear." "Then what is it about?" "It's about being realistic. It's about protecting myself and protecting you and protecting Lily from something that's probably going to end badly. Or it could end beautifully. We don't know. Nobody knows. That's what taking a chance means." Eleanor shook her head, backing away. "I can't. I'm sorry, Lucas, but I can't do this. Can't or won't. Does it matter?" She was crying openly now, tears streaming down her face. "The answer is still no." Lucas felt something crack inside his chest. "So what? We just go back to being strangers? Pretend the last 6 months didn't happen?" "I don't know. Maybe that would be easier." "Easier for who?" "For everyone." Eleanor's voice rose, desperate. "For you, for Lily, for me. This whole thing is a mistake, Lucas. I never should have let it get this far." "A mistake," Lucas repeated flatly. "Is that what I am to you, a mistake?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean? Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you're throwing away something real because you're too afraid to take a risk." Eleanor flinched as if he'd struck her. "You don't understand. Then make me understand. Talk to me instead of shutting me out." "I can't." The words erupted from her like a dam breaking. Don't you get it? I can't talk about this. I can't think about this. I can't let myself want this because if I do and it falls apart, it will destroy me. Losing Daniel destroyed me. It took me 5 years to put the pieces back together, and they're still barely holding. I can't risk breaking again. Daniel, the husband in the photo. The ghost Lucas had been competing with without even knowing it. I'm sorry you lost him, Lucas said quietly. I can't imagine that kind of pain. But Eleanor, he wouldn't want you to stop living. He wouldn't want you to be alone forever. You didn't know him. You don't know what he'd want. You're right. But I know you, and I know that the woman I've gotten to know over these months is brave and strong and deserves to be happy. You deserve love, Eleanor. And what if I don't want it? Her voice was small now, defeated. What if I'm too broken for this? You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. They stood facing each other in the moonlit garden, surrounded by roses Eleanor had planted and nurtured back to life. The symbolism wasn't lost on Lucas. She'd brought beauty from nothing in this garden. Why couldn't she see she could do the same with her own life? I need you to leave, Eleanor said finally. Please. Eleanor, please, Lucas, just go. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, to push, to refuse to give up, but he could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she was holding herself together through sheer force of will. Okay, he said softly. I'll go. But this conversation isn't over. I'm not giving up on you, Eleanor, on us. There is no us. Yes, there is. You're just too scared to admit it. He turned and walked away, climbing back over the fence into his own yard. He didn't look back, even though everything in him wanted to. At his back door, he paused, listening. The sound of Eleanor's crying drifted across the fence, soft and heartbroken, and Lucas had to grip the door frame to keep from running back to her. Inside, the empty house felt even lonelier than before. Lucas grabbed a beer from the fridge and sank onto the couch, replaying the conversation in his head. He'd laid it all out there, exactly like Marcus had suggested. Cards on the table, no more games, and Eleanor had said no. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Lily's asleep. Everything okay? Lucas stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, Yeah, all good. See you tomorrow. The lie sat bitter on his tongue, but what else could he say? That he'd just had his heart broken in a moonlit garden? That the woman he was falling in love with was too afraid of happiness to take a chance? He drained the beer and grabbed another, knowing sleep wasn't coming anytime soon. Tomorrow, he'd pick up Lily from his mother's house. Tomorrow, he'd smile and pretend everything was fine. Tomorrow, he'd figure out how to be neighbors with a woman he loved who didn't want to love him back. But tonight, he let himself feel the weight of it. The rejection, the frustration, the grief for something that had never quite gotten the chance to be. Outside, Eleanor's house went dark, one window at a time, until there was nothing but silence and moonlight and the space between them that felt wider than ever. The week that followed felt like living underwater. Everything moved slower, sounded muffled, looked dimmer. Lucas went through the motions: breakfast with Lily, drop off at school, 8 hours at the garage, pickup, dinner, homework, bedtime. But it all felt mechanical, like he was watching someone else live his life. Eleanor's house might as well have been on another planet. Her car left early each morning and returned late each evening. The curtains stayed drawn. The garden, so carefully tended just days before, sat untouched as weeds began creeping back between the roses. Lily noticed immediately. "Why doesn't Miss Eleanor wave anymore?" she asked on Tuesday, pressing her face against the car window as they pulled out of the driveway. "She's probably just busy with work, Bug. But she always waved before, every single day. People get busy sometimes." "Is she mad at me?" Lily's voice went small and worried. "Because I looked at her pictures without asking." Lucas's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "No, sweetheart. She's not mad at you. I promise." "Then why won't she talk to us?" "It's complicated, Lily. That's what grown-ups always say when they don't want to explain things." She wasn't wrong. Lucas glanced in the rearview mirror at his daughter's troubled face and felt a fresh wave of anger at Eleanor. Whatever fears she was wrestling with, whatever walls she was building, Lily was collateral damage, and that wasn't fair. At work, Patterson noticed his distraction within the first hour. You forget which end of the wrench to use, Reed? Lucas blinked down at the socket wrench in his hand, realizing he'd been staring at it for several minutes without actually doing anything. Sorry, mine's elsewhere. Yeah, I can see that. Patterson wiped his hands on a rag and leaned against the workbench. Woman trouble still? She told me to leave her alone. Ah, Patterson nodded sagely. And are you? What choice do I have? She made herself pretty clear. She say she doesn't have feelings for you? Lucas thought back to that night in the garden, to the tears on Eleanor's face, to the way her voice had cracked when she'd talked about being too broken. Not exactly. Then she's scared. Scared people say lots of things they don't mean. Or maybe she meant exactly what she said, and I need to accept it and move on. Patterson shrugged. Maybe. But in my experience, when something's worth having, it's worth fighting for. Question is whether you think she's worth the fight. Lucas didn't answer, but they both knew he already had. By Wednesday, the neighborhood gossip had reached new heights. Mrs. Chen stopped him on his way to the mailbox, her expression dripping with false sympathy. I heard there was quite a bit of shouting from Eleanor's yard Friday night, she said, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. Everything all right between you two? Everything's fine, Mrs. Chen. Because people have been saying it was only a matter of time before things got complicated. Age differences can be so tricky, especially with a child involved. Lucas felt his jaw clench. There's nothing complicated because there's nothing happening. We're neighbors, that's all. Of course, dear. I'm just saying it's probably for the best. A man your age needs someone who can give him more children, not someone who's already past all that. The casual cruelty of it hit him like a physical blow. That's enough. Mrs. Chen blinked, taken aback. I'm only trying to help. You're gossiping. There's a difference. Lucas grabbed his mail and turned away before he said something he'd regret. Behind him, he could hear Mrs. Chen's affronted huffing, but he didn't care anymore. He looked up at Eleanor's house and saw a curtain twitch. She'd heard. Of course she'd heard. The whole damn neighborhood had probably heard. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Lucas found himself staring at his phone. He drafted and deleted a dozen text messages to Eleanor over the past few days, each one feeling either too desperate or too angry or too pathetic. Finally, he settled on something simple. I'm sorry about Mrs. Chen today. You didn't deserve that. He hit send before he could second-guess himself, then immediately regretted it. But 3 dots appeared almost instantly, meaning Eleanor was typing. The dots disappeared, reappeared, disappeared again. Finally, a message came through. It's fine. I'm used to it. You shouldn't have to be. Another long pause, then, Lucas, please don't. Don't what? Care that people are cruel to you? Don't make this harder than it already is. His fingers flew across the keyboard. You're the one making it hard. All I want is a chance, just one real chance. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. When her response finally came, it was a single word. Good night. Lucas stared at the screen, frustration building in his chest like steam in a pressure cooker. He wanted to type back, to push, to demand she stop hiding. But what good would it do? She'd made her choice. She'd chosen fear over possibility, safety over risk. He tossed the phone onto the couch and headed to the kitchen, yanking open the freezer for the ice cream he kept hidden in the back. Mint chocolate chip. Lily's favorite, though she didn't know about his secret stash. He grabbed a spoon and ate directly from the carton, standing at the kitchen window and staring out at Eleanor's dark house. The knock on his front door made him jump, nearly dropping the ice cream. For one wild, hopeful second he thought it might be Eleanor. But when he opened the door, Marcus stood on the porch, looking apologetic. Your mom called me. Said you sounded off when you talked to her today. Lucas groaned. I'm fine. You didn't need to drive over here. Yeah, well, I was in the neighborhood. Marcus pushed past him into the house, spotting the ice cream immediately. Stress eating. That's a good sign. It's not stress eating. I was hungry. Uh-huh. Because mint chocolate chip is definitely a dinner food. Marcus grabbed a second spoon from the drawer and helped himself. So she really shot you down? Lucas slumped onto the couch. Completely. Her loss. Doesn't feel like it. Marcus was quiet for a moment, working on the ice cream. Then he said, You remember when Sarah and I broke up senior year? You mean when she dumped you for the quarterback and you spent 3 weeks listening to Dashboard Confessional on repeat? Exactly that. You know what you told me? Lucas shook his head. You said sometimes the right person comes along at the wrong time, and all you can do is wait and hope the timing gets better. Or you move on and find someone whose timing matches yours. That's pretty wise for 18-year-old me. You've always been the smart one. Marcus set down his spoon. Question is, what are you going to do now? Wait or move on? I don't know. Both options sound terrible. Yeah, well, heartbreak usually does. They finished the ice cream in silence, and Marcus left around midnight with instructions to call if Lucas needed anything. But after he was gone, the house felt even emptier than before. Thursday brought rain, heavy and relentless, the kind that turned Portland streets into rivers and made visibility nearly impossible. Lucas picked Lily up from school to find her unusually quiet, staring out the window at the downpour. You okay, Bug? Miss Eleanor wasn't at school today. Lucas's stomach dropped. What do you mean? She wasn't there. Mr. Rodriguez had to teach both classes because she called in sick. But Lily turned worried eyes on him. What if she's really sick, Daddy? What if she needs help? I'm sure she's fine, sweetheart. Sometimes people just need a day off. But anxiety gnawed at him for the rest of the drive home. Eleanor never missed work. She'd told him once that teaching was the only thing that had gotten her through the worst of her grief, that her students needed her, and that gave her purpose. When they pulled onto Maple Street, Eleanor's car was in the driveway, but the house looked dark despite the early evening gloom. No lights, no movement. Can we check on her? Lily asked. Please. Lily, I don't think... What if she's hurt? What if she fell and can't get up? What if she needs medicine and she's too sick to get it? The worry in his daughter's voice decided him. All right, but just a quick check, okay? And if she asks us to leave, we leave. Deal? Deal. They ran through the rain to Eleanor's porch, and Lucas knocked firmly on the door. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Eleanor, it's Lucas. We just want to make sure you're okay. Silence. He was about to give up when he heard movement inside, slow and shuffling. The door opened a crack and Eleanor peered out. She looked terrible. Her hair was tangled, her face pale and drawn, her eyes red-rimmed. She wore sweatpants and an oversized sweater, and she was shivering despite being inside. What are you doing here? Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Lily said you missed school. We wanted to check on you. I'm fine, just a cold. But even as she said it, she swayed slightly, catching herself on the doorframe. You're not fine. Lucas made a decision. Lily, run home and grab the soup from the freezer, okay? The chicken noodle. Okay. Lily took off running. Lucas, you don't need to... Eleanor started, but broke off in a coughing fit that racked her whole body. When's the last time you ate something? I don't... Yesterday, maybe? Jesus, Eleanor. Without asking permission, Lucas stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The house was cold. He could see his breath in the air. Your heat's out? Furnace is making a weird noise. I was going to call someone tomorrow. Tomorrow? Right, because that's a great plan when you're sick and it's 40 degrees outside. He was already moving through the house, checking the thermostat. Dead. Where's your furnace? Basement, but Lucas, really, I can handle this. Yeah, you're handling it great. That's why you look like death warmed over and your house is an icebox. He found the basement stairs and headed down, Eleanor trailing behind him despite clearly barely being able to stand. The furnace was old, probably original to the house, and it was making a grinding noise that didn't sound promising. Lucas examined it for a few minutes, then flipped the emergency shutoff. What are you doing? Eleanor asked from the stairs. Keeping your house from burning down. This thing's about to die completely. I'll call Patterson. He knows a good HVAC guy. In the meantime, you can't stay here. I'm not leaving my house. Eleanor, it's going to be in the 30s tonight. You'll freeze. I'll be fine. I have blankets. Lucas climbed the stairs, stopping right in front of her. Up close, he could see she was burning with fever, her skin flushed and hot despite the shivering. When are you going to stop being so damn stubborn and just accept help? When are you going to stop trying to save me? She shot back, but there was no heat in it. She was too exhausted. Probably never. He put a hand on her forehead, and she was burning up. You need to see a doctor. I'll be fine. It's just the flu or something. Or something is right. Come on. I'm taking you to urgent care. Lucas, Eleanor, for once in your life, stop fighting and let someone take care of you. Maybe it was the fever, or maybe she was just too tired to argue anymore, but she nodded. Okay. Lily returned with the soup just as Lucas was helping Eleanor into a coat. Is Miss Eleanor okay? She's going to be fine, Bug. Can you do me a favor? Go tell Mrs. Chen that I'm taking Eleanor to the doctor and ask if she can watch you for a couple hours. Lily's face lit up. You're taking care of her. Just being a good neighbor. Uh-huh. Lily grinned, clearly not buying it, but she ran off to find Mrs. Chen. The drive to urgent care was quiet. Eleanor dozed in the passenger seat, her breathing raspy and labored. Lucas kept glancing over, worry gnawing at him. This was more than just a cold. At the clinic, they waited for 45 minutes before a nurse called Eleanor back. Lucas started to stay in the waiting room, but Eleanor grabbed his hand. Come with me. Her voice was small, frightened in a way he'd never heard before, and he couldn't refuse. The doctor diagnosed pneumonia, prescribed strong antibiotics and an inhaler, and gave strict instructions about rest and hydration. Eleanor took the news with a nod, too exhausted to react much. Is there someone who can monitor you for the next few days? The doctor asked. You shouldn't be alone with a fever this high. Eleanor started to say she'd be fine, but Lucas cut her off. I'll make sure she's looked after. The doctor nodded, satisfied, and left them alone in the exam room. Lucas, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. He crouched down so they were eye level. And before you argue, think about this. If our positions were reversed, if I was the one who was sick, would you leave me alone? Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. No, she finally admitted. Exactly. So let me help. They stopped at the pharmacy to fill her prescriptions. Then Lucas drove her back to Maple Street. Mrs. Chen had already spread the word. By the time they arrived, half the neighborhood seemed to know Eleanor was sick. Mrs. Patterson had dropped off a casserole. Mr. Rodriguez from school had left flowers on the porch. See? Lucas said, carrying the items inside. People care about you. Or they're just nosy, Eleanor muttered, but there was a ghost of a smile on her lips. Lucas got her settled on the couch with blankets and pillows, then went to work. He started a fire in her fireplace to supplement the heat until the furnace could be fixed. He made tea with honey. He heated up the soup and made her eat half a bowl, even though she protested she wasn't hungry. Lily, who Mrs. Chen had eventually brought over, sat on the arm of the couch and held Eleanor's hand. You have to get better, Miss Eleanor, she said seriously. We need you. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry I've been distant lately, sweetie. It's okay. Daddy says sometimes grown-ups need space, but I missed you. I missed you too. Eleanor looked up at Lucas, something complicated in her expression. Both of you. By 9 o'clock, Eleanor's fever had broken slightly, and she was breathing easier. Lily had fallen asleep in the armchair, curled up like a cat. Lucas covered her with a blanket, then sat on the coffee table facing Eleanor. Thank you, she said quietly, for all of this. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. He held her gaze. Eleanor, I know you're scared. I know you have reasons, but look at today. You needed help, and you were going to tough it out alone in a freezing house rather than ask for it. Do you know how much that scares me? I've been alone for a long time. I'm used to it. That doesn't mean you have to stay that way. He reached out, taking her hand carefully. I meant what I said the other night, all of it. And I get that you're not ready to hear it, that maybe you'll never be ready. But I'm not going anywhere, Eleanor. Even if we're just neighbors, even if that's all we ever are, I'm still going to be here. I'm still going to care. I'm still going to show up when you need someone. Eleanor's grip tightened on his hand. Why? Because that's what you do for people you love. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Eleanor's breath caught, and for a moment, Lucas thought she might pull away again. But instead, she held on tighter. I don't deserve you, she whispered. That's not for you to decide. They sat like that for a long time, hands linked, the fire crackling softly in the background. Finally, Eleanor spoke again. "Can I tell you about Daniel?" Lucas nodded, staying quiet, giving her space. "We met in college. He was studying architecture, and I was doing my teaching certification. He was funny and kind and had this way of making everyone around him feel special." Eleanor's voice was thick with memory. "We got married right after graduation, bought a tiny apartment in Seattle, started building a life." She paused, wiping her eyes. 5 years in, he was driving home from a job site. A drunk driver ran a red light. Daniel died instantly. He was 30 years old. Lucas squeezed her hand, his throat tight. The grief was... I can't even describe it. It was like drowning on dry land. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't function. My parents had to come stay with me for months because I couldn't be trusted alone. And even after I started going through the motions again, even after I went back to work and pretended to be okay, there was this hole inside me that nothing could fill. I'm so sorry, Eleanor. It took 5 years before I could say his name without crying. 5 years before I could look at our wedding photos without wanting to die. And even now, even after all this time, there are moments when the loss hits me all over again and I can barely breathe. She turned to face him fully, tears streaming down her face. "So when you say you're falling in love with me, when you look at me the way you do, when Lily draws pictures of the three of us together, it terrifies me. Because what if I let myself love you back? What if I let myself believe in this? And then something happens and I lose you too. I can't survive that again, Lucas. I can't." Lucas moved to sit beside her on the couch, pulling her into his arms. She collapsed against him, sobbing into his chest, and he held her tight. "You can't live your whole life afraid of loss," he said gently. "I know it's easy for me to say. I haven't been through what you have. But Eleanor, Daniel wouldn't want you to be alone forever. He wouldn't want you to close yourself off from happiness because you're afraid of getting hurt." "How do you know what he'd want?" "Because if I loved someone the way he loved you, I'd want them to live, really live, not just exist." Eleanor pulled back, looking up at him with red, swollen eyes. "What if the age thing becomes a problem? What if you wake up one day and realize you wasted your youth on someone older?" "What if I wake up one day and realize I wasted my chance at happiness because I was too afraid to take a risk?" Lucas countered. "Eleanor, I don't care about 6 years. I care about you. The person sitting in front of me right now, that's all that matters. People will talk. They already are. Let them talk." I stopped caring what Mrs. Chen thinks about my life around the same time she suggested you were too old to be worth my time. Eleanor's eyes widened. She said that? More or less. And you know what? It made me realize that anyone who judges us doesn't know us. They don't see what I see when I look at you. They don't know how patient you are with Lily, how hard you work, how much kindness you show to everyone around you. They don't know that you make me laugh until my sides hurt, or that talking to you is the best part of my day, or that I've never felt more seen by anyone in my entire life. Lucas, I'm not saying it'll be easy. I'm not saying there won't be challenges, but I'm saying I want to try. I want to see where this goes. And I think deep down, you want that too. Eleanor was quiet for a long time, her head resting against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "I'm so scared." "I know, but you don't have to be scared alone." She looked up at him, and something in her expression had shifted. The walls weren't completely down, but they'd cracked, let in a sliver of light. "I can't promise I'll be good at this," she said. "I can't promise I won't panic and try to run again. I'm not asking for promises, I'm just asking for a chance." Eleanor took a shaky breath. "One chance. That's all I can give right now." Lucas felt hope bloom in his chest, fragile but real. "That's all I need." He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But she didn't. She met him halfway, and when their lips touched, it felt like coming home. The kiss was gentle, tentative, flavored with tears and medication and hope. When they pulled apart, Eleanor was smiling, a real smile, the first he'd seen in days. "This is crazy," she said. "Probably. But we're going to have to figure out so much. How to do this with Lily, what to tell people, how to navigate everything." "One day at a time," Lucas interrupted. "We don't have to solve everything tonight." Eleanor nodded, then yawned hugely. The antibiotics were kicking in, making her drowsy. "You should sleep," Lucas said. "I'll take Lily home and come back to check on you in the morning." "Stay." The word came out before she could stop it, and she blushed. "I mean, you could sleep in the guest room, if you want, just... I don't want to be alone tonight." Lucas smiled. "Okay. Let me text my mom to bring over some clothes for tomorrow." He carried a still sleeping Lily upstairs to the guest room, tucking her into the bed. Then he helped Eleanor upstairs to her own room, making sure she took her medication and had water on the nightstand. "Thank you," she said, already half asleep, "for not giving up on me." "Never," Lucas promised. He settled into the second guest room, but sleep eluded him. His mind was racing, replaying every moment of the evening. Eleanor had finally opened up, finally let him in, even just a little. It wasn't a guarantee of anything. She'd been clear about her fears, about the possibility that she might bolt again. But it was a start, a real start. Around 2 in the morning, he heard movement in the hallway. Eleanor appeared in his doorway, silhouetted by the nightlight. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Fever dreams," she admitted. Would it be okay if I stayed in here? Just until I fall asleep?" Lucas pulled back the covers in answer, and Eleanor climbed in beside him. He held her carefully, like she was made of glass, and she curled into his side with a sigh. "This is nice," she murmured, already drifting off. "Yeah," Lucas agreed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "It really is." Within minutes, her breathing had evened out into sleep. Lucas lay awake a while longer, marveling at the weight of her in his arms, at the trust implicit in her presence here. Whatever came next, whatever challenges they'd face, at least they'd face them together. And for now, that was enough. Lucas woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the sound of small footsteps thundering down the hallway. For a disoriented moment, he couldn't remember where he was. Then he felt the warm weight beside him, and everything came flooding back. Eleanor was still asleep, her face peaceful in the morning light, one hand curled beneath her cheek. She looked younger like this, the worry lines smoothed away, her breathing steady and deep. The bedroom door burst open. "Daddy, Miss Eleanor has the good cereal, the kind with the marshmallows that you never buy because you say it's basically candy for breakfast," and Lily stopped mid-sentence, her eyes going wide as she took in the scene. "Are you guys having a sleepover?" Eleanor stirred, her eyes fluttering open. When she registered where she was and who was watching, she sat up so quickly she nearly fell out of bed. "Lily, this isn't..." She looked at Lucas helplessly, her face flushing crimson. Lucas sat up slowly, keeping his voice calm. "Miss Eleanor wasn't feeling well last night, remember? I stayed to make sure she was okay." In the same bed, Lily's tone was less accusatory than curious, her head tilted like a bird examining something fascinating. "Sometimes when people don't feel good, it helps to have someone close by," Lucas said carefully. "Like when you had that nightmare last month and climbed into my bed." Lily considered this, then shrugged with the easy acceptance of childhood. "Okay, can we have the marshmallow cereal now?" Eleanor laughed, the sound surprised and slightly hysterical. "Yes, sweetheart, help yourself." After Lily thundered back downstairs, Eleanor buried her face in her hands. "Oh my God, that's not how I wanted to start this." "Start what?" Lucas asked gently. She peeked at him through her fingers. "This, us, whatever we're doing. We're figuring it out, together. Remember?" Eleanor lowered her hands, her expression vulnerable in the morning light. "I remember. I don't know how to do this, Lucas. It's been so long since I let anyone this close." "Then we'll learn together." He reached for her hand, threading their fingers together. "How are you feeling? Physically, I mean." "Better. Still tired, but the fever's down." She squeezed his hand. "Thank you for staying, for all of it." "You don't have to keep thanking me." "Yes, I do. Because you keep showing up even when I give you every reason not to." Downstairs, they found Lily had indeed helped herself to the cereal and was sitting at Eleanor's kitchen table, milk dribbling down her chin as she shoveled rainbow marshmallows into her mouth with impressive speed. "Slow down, Bug, you're going to choke," Lucas said, grabbing a napkin. "But it's so good." "Miss Eleanor, why is your cereal better than Daddy's boring flakes?" Eleanor smiled, pouring coffee for herself and Lucas. Because sometimes we need a little sweetness in the morning. She met Lucas's eyes over her coffee cup, and the look that passed between them held layers of meaning that had nothing to do with breakfast cereal. The rest of the morning passed in a gentle domestic rhythm that felt both foreign and utterly natural. Lucas made scrambled eggs while Eleanor supervised from a kitchen chair, still too weak to stand for long. Lily chattered about everything and nothing, clearly delighted to have both adults' attention. Around 10 o'clock, Lucas's phone buzzed. Patterson. Yeah? Got my HVAC guy heading over to Eleanor's place in about 20 minutes. That work? Lucas glanced at Eleanor, who nodded. Perfect. Thanks, Patterson. She doing okay? Word around the neighborhood is she looked pretty rough yesterday. She's on the mend. Pneumonia, but antibiotics are helping. Good, good. Tell her the whole shop says get well soon. Oh, and Reed, about time you two figured your shit out. Lucas felt his ears burn. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. See you Monday. Patterson hung up, laughing. The HVAC technician arrived promptly, a weathered man named Dale, who took one look at Eleanor's ancient furnace and shook his head. She's done for. I can patch her up for now, but you're looking at a full replacement within the month. Eleanor's face fell. How much are we talking? 4, maybe 5,000 for a new system. Lucas saw Eleanor do the mental math, saw the stress crease her forehead. Teachers didn't make that kind of money, especially not with medical bills piling up from urgent care. Can you give us an estimate in writing? Lucas asked. We'll need to figure out the best option. After Dale left with promises of a patch job by end of day, Eleanor slumped at the kitchen table. I don't have $5,000 just lying around. I barely have $500 in savings after the move. We'll figure something out. Lucas, this isn't your problem. Stop. He crouched beside her chair. If we're doing this, really doing this, then we help each other. That's how it works. I can't ask you to pay for my furnace. You're not asking. I'm offering. And before you argue, think of it as an investment in my own comfort. I plan on spending a lot of time here, and I'd prefer not to freeze. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. You can't just throw money at every problem I have. I'm not throwing money. I'm offering support. There's a difference. He wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Besides, Patterson knows a guy who does refurbished systems. Probably cut the cost in half. And I can do the installation myself with some help. We'll make it work. Why are you so good to me? Because you're worth it. When are you going to start believing that? Before Eleanor could answer, Lily wandered in from the living room where she'd been watching cartoons. Miss Eleanor, are you crying? Just a little, sweetheart. Happy tears? Lily climbed into Eleanor's lap, wrapping her small arms around her neck. Don't be sad. Daddy always fixes everything. Eleanor hugged her tight, her voice thick. He really does, doesn't he? Over Lily's head, her eyes met Lucas's, and he saw something shift there, a wall coming down, a decision being made. That afternoon, after Lucas had taken Lily home for a nap, he returned to find Eleanor sitting in her garden despite the lingering chill in the air. She'd wrapped herself in blankets and was staring at the roses with an expression he couldn't quite read. Should you be outside? He asked, settling onto the bench beside her. Probably not, but I needed air. She was quiet for a moment, then said, I've been thinking about what you said, about Daniel not wanting me to be alone forever. Lucas waited, letting her take her time. There's something I never told anyone. After he died, I found a letter he'd written for me, just in case. Eleanor's voice was barely above a whisper. He was driving to a dangerous job site that day, and I guess he had a feeling. The letter said, it said that if something happened to him, he wanted me to promise I'd keep living. Really living, not just going through the motions. He made me promise I'd let myself love again. Did you promise? I couldn't. Every time I tried to read past that part, I'd break down. Eventually, I put the letter away and tried to forget about it. She turned to face him. But I remembered it last night. While I was falling asleep next to you, feeling safe for the first time in years, I remembered. And I realized I've been breaking that promise every day for the past 5 years. Lucas took her hand. You're not breaking it anymore. I'm terrified I'm going to screw this up, that I'm going to panic and run, or freeze you out when things get hard, or then we'll work through it. Eleanor, I'm not expecting perfect. I'm just asking for real. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Real I can do. Barely. But I can try. They sat in silence for a while, watching clouds drift across the Portland sky. Finally, Eleanor spoke again. We need to talk to Lily. Really talk to her. She needs to understand what's happening between us. Agreed. When? Soon, before the neighborhood does it for us. Eleanor's mouth twisted wryly. Mrs. Chen probably already has theories. Mrs. Chen can mind her own business. That evening, after dinner, they sat Lily down in Eleanor's living room. She looked between them with bright, curious eyes, sensing something important was coming. Lily, Bug, we need to talk to you about something, Lucas started. Are you and Miss Eleanor dating? Lily asked immediately. Lucas and Eleanor exchanged surprised looks. What makes you think that? You look at each other the way Prince Eric looks at Ariel in my movie, all smiley and googly-eyed. Lily demonstrated with an exaggerated expression that made Eleanor laugh, despite her nervousness. Well, you're not wrong, Lucas admitted. How do you feel about that? Lily was quiet for a moment, her face serious in the way only children can be when processing something important. Does this mean Miss Eleanor is going to be my mom? Eleanor's breath caught. Lucas saw panic flash across her face and quickly intervened. That's not something we need to figure out right now, sweetheart. Right now we like each other and want to spend more time together, as a family. But I already have a mom, Lily said, though her tone was uncertain. Jessica called maybe once a month, sent birthday cards with generic messages, had visited exactly twice in 3 years. You do, Eleanor said gently, finding her voice. And nothing will change that. I'm not trying to replace your mom, Lily. I care about you and your dad very much. And if you're okay with it, I'd like to be part of your lives in a bigger way. Like sleepovers and dinners and going to the park together? Exactly like that. Lily considered this with the seriousness of a judge deliberating a verdict. Then her face broke into a huge smile. Okay, can we have pancakes for breakfast tomorrow? All together? Lucas felt tension drain from his shoulders. Pancakes sound perfect. But as Lily ran off to play, Eleanor caught his arm. That was close. When she asked about being her mom, I almost bolted. I know, but you didn't. You stayed. This time. But Lucas, what if next time I don't? What if I hurt her? Then we'll deal with it. Together. He cupped her face in his hands. Eleanor, you're not going to be perfect at this. Neither am I. We're going to make mistakes, but we'll make them together and we'll fix them together. That's all we can do. She nodded, but he could see the fear still lingering in her eyes. The next week passed in a blur of adjustments. Eleanor returned to work, still weak but improving. Lucas spent his evenings either at her place or bringing her to his, always with Lily as their enthusiastic third wheel. They were taking it slow, finding their rhythm, learning how to exist as something more than neighbors, but not quite ready to define exactly what that something was. The neighborhood noticed, of course. Whispers followed them at the grocery store. Mrs. Chen made pointed comments about moving fast and thinking of the child. Mr. Peterson asked Lucas directly if he knew what he was doing, getting involved with a woman who'd already lived half her life. Each comment chipped away at Eleanor's fragile confidence. Lucas would find her staring into space, worry etched across her features, and he knew she was cataloging every reason this was a mistake. They're going to keep talking, she said one night as they sat on his porch after Lily had gone to bed. It's only going to get worse. Let them talk. But what if they're right? What if we're being irresponsible or... Eleanor. He turned to face her. The only opinions that matter are yours, mine, and Lily's. Everyone else is just noise. Easy for you to say. You're not the one they're calling desperate or pathetic for dating someone younger. Lucas felt anger flash through him. Who called you that? It doesn't matter. It does to me. Eleanor shook her head. Fighting with the neighbors won't help anything. It'll just make it worse. So what do you want to do? Hide? Pretend we're not together? I don't know. I hate feeling like we're the neighborhood scandal. Lucas was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he said, Lily's birthday is in 2 weeks. I know, she's been talking about it nonstop. I was thinking of throwing her a party. Here in the backyard, inviting the whole neighborhood. Eleanor's eyes widened. Lucas, I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Let them see us together. Let them see we're not hiding or ashamed. Let them see what we actually are instead of what they're imagining. What if it makes things worse? What if it makes things better? He took her hand. I'm tired of living under this cloud of judgment. I want to show them, show you, that I'm not afraid of what people think. Eleanor searched his face. You're serious about this? Completely, but only if you're comfortable with it. She was quiet for a long time. Then, slowly, she nodded. Okay, let's do it. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of party planning. Lily was over the moon, drawing up elaborate lists of games and activities, changing her mind about themes daily until they settled on a rainbow unicorn extravaganza. Lucas ordered decorations while Eleanor baked what seemed like an entire bakery's worth of cupcakes, insisting she wanted to contribute despite Lucas's protests. The night before the party, Eleanor showed up at his door looking panicked. I can't do this. Lucas had been hanging streamers in the backyard. He set down the tape and walked over to her. Yes, you can. Everyone's going to be staring at us, judging, talking. Probably. And that doesn't bother you? Not even a little. He pulled her into his arms. Eleanor, I love you. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not going to hide it or apologize for it. And I need you to decide if you can live with that. She pulled back, eyes wide. You love me? Lucas realized what he'd said. He'd meant to wait, to choose the perfect moment, but the words had escaped before he could stop them. Yeah, I do. I love you. Tears spilled down Eleanor's cheeks. Say it again. I love you, Eleanor Hayes. I love your strength and your stubbornness and the way you care for everyone around you, even when you're barely holding yourself together. I love how you make Lily laugh, and I love how you challenge me to be better. I love you exactly as you are, and I don't care who knows it. Lucas, Her voice broke. I'm so scared. I know, but do you love me back? She nodded, unable to speak. Then that's all that matters. Everything else we'll figure out. Eleanor threw her arms around his neck, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. I love you too, she whispered. I'm terrified and probably going to mess this up, but I love you. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other under the half-hung streamers, and Lucas felt something settle in his chest. A rightness. A certainty that whatever came next, they'd face it together. The morning of Lily's birthday dawned bright and clear, unseasonably warm for early spring. Lucas woke early to finish setting up the backyard, stringing lights between trees, setting up tables, inflating what felt like 1,000 balloons. Eleanor arrived by 7, despite the party not starting until noon, armed with trays of cupcakes and a determined expression. You're sure about this? She asked as they worked side by side. Absolutely sure. You? She took a deep breath. Ask me again in 6 hours. Lily woke up to a kitchen full of presents and the smell of Eleanor's cinnamon rolls, and her shriek of delight could probably be heard 3 blocks away. She spent the morning in a state of barely contained excitement, changing outfits 4 times before settling on a rainbow tutu and glitter sneakers. By noon, the backyard was transformed. Streamers and balloons created a canopy of color. Tables groaned under the weight of food, not just cupcakes, but sandwiches, fruit, chips, and the massive unicorn cake Lucas had special ordered. Games were set up on the lawn. Everything was perfect. At 12:15, guests started arriving. Lily's school friends came first, a tornado of 8-year-olds who immediately descended on the games. Their parents followed, making polite conversation, eyeing Lucas and Eleanor with barely concealed curiosity. Then the neighbors began trickling in, Mrs. Chen with her famous potato salad and a sharp, assessing look. The Pattersons bearing gifts and warm smiles. Mr. Rodriguez from Eleanor's school. The Johnsons from down the street. Old Mr. Peterson. The Davidsons with their teenage twins. Within an hour, the backyard was packed with what felt like the entire neighborhood, and Lucas felt Eleanor tense beside him as conversation lulls began filling with whispers and sidelong glances. You okay? He murmured. Define okay. she murmured back, her smile fixed and brittle. Lily, oblivious to adult tensions, was having the time of her life. She raced between games, stuffed cake into her face with her friends, opened presents with squeals of delight. Watching her joy almost made Lucas forget about the undercurrent of gossip swirling through the party. Almost, but not quite. He caught fragments of conversation as he circulated with drinks. Mrs. Chen to Mrs. Davidson. Moving awfully fast, don't you think? The poor girl barely knows what's happening. Mr. Peterson to someone Lucas didn't recognize. Hope he knows what he's getting into. My wife was 6 years older, and let me tell you. A cluster of parents from Lily's school shooting looks at Eleanor and whispering behind their hands. Lucas felt his jaw tighten with each comment, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting defensive would only make things worse. Then he saw Eleanor standing alone by the fence, her arms wrapped around herself, her eyes bright with unshed tears. She was watching Lily play, but clearly heard every whispered comment, every judgment. Marcus appeared at Lucas's elbow. You gonna let them do that to her? What am I supposed to do? Call everyone out? That'll really help. Or you could man up and make a statement. Show them what she means to you instead of letting them tear her down with speculation. Lucas looked at his friend. What are you suggesting? You know what I'm suggesting. You've been thinking about it for weeks. Stop overthinking and just do it. Lucas's hand went to his pocket, feeling the small box he'd been carrying around since before Eleanor got sick. He'd bought it on impulse, knowing it was too soon, knowing she wasn't ready. But Marcus was right. Sometimes you had to take the leap and trust the net would appear. If I do this and she runs, I'm blaming you, Lucas muttered. Marcus grinned. She won't run. Trust me. Lucas took a deep breath, then walked to the center of the yard. Hey everyone, can I have your attention for a minute? Conversation died as faces turned toward him. Lily stopped mid-game, her face bright with curiosity. Eleanor looked up from her spot by the fence, confusion and apprehension warring on her features. Lucas's heart was hammering so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate Lily's birthday. It means the world to us to have such a great community around us. Polite murmurs of acknowledgement rippled through the crowd. There's something else I want to say, though, something I should have said weeks ago. He sought out Eleanor's eyes across the yard. I know there's been a lot of talk lately about me and Eleanor. A lot of speculation and judgment about our friendship, our age difference, what it all means. The silence was absolute now. You could have heard a pin drop. Here's the truth. Eleanor Hayes is the kindest, strongest, most incredible woman I've ever met. She's patient with my daughter when Lily's being impossible. She stays up late helping with homework. She bakes cookies just to see us smile. She's brave enough to start over after devastating loss, brave enough to open her heart again even when she's terrified. Eleanor had gone pale, her hand pressed to her mouth. She's 6 years older than me, and you know what? I don't care. Not even a little bit. Because age doesn't determine worth. What matters is how she makes me feel, seen, valued, challenged to be better. What matters is how Lily lights up whenever Eleanor's around. What matters is that for the first time in years, I'm not just surviving, I'm actually happy. He walked toward Eleanor as he spoke, the crowd parting to let him through. She stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. I know some of you have concerns. I know some of you think this is a mistake or that we're moving too fast. And maybe we are. Maybe this whole thing will crash and burn spectacularly. He stopped in front of her, taking her trembling hands in his. But I'd rather take that risk than spend the rest of my life wondering what if. I'd rather bet everything on love than play it safe and end up alone. Lucas? Eleanor whispered, her voice breaking. What are you doing? Something I should have done weeks ago. He dropped to one knee and Eleanor's eyes went wide. Gasps erupted around the yard. Lucas heard Lily shriek with excitement somewhere behind him. He pulled the small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple silver band with a small diamond. Nothing extravagant. He couldn't afford extravagant. But it was real, and it was his heart in physical form. Eleanor Hayes, I love you. I love your strength and your vulnerability, your laughter and your tears, your past and your future. I want to build a life with you, to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to support you through hard times and celebrate with you through good ones. I want to show you every single day that you are worthy of love, that age is just a number, and that taking a chance on happiness is always worth the risk. His voice was shaking now, raw with emotion. Will you marry me? The silence stretched impossibly long. Eleanor stood frozen, staring down at him with an expression he couldn't read. Lucas's heart was in his throat, terror and hope warring inside him. Then, from across the yard, a small voice called out, "Say yes, Miss Eleanor! Please say yes!" Lily's plea seemed to break the spell. Eleanor's face crumpled, and she dropped to her knees in front of Lucas, cupping his face in her hands. "You're crazy," she said through her tears. "Completely insane. Is that a yes or a no?" I can't believe you just did this in front of everyone. I wanted them to know, wanted you to know. No more hiding, Eleanor. No more being afraid of what people think." She looked into his eyes, and Lucas saw the moment she decided. The moment she chose courage over fear, possibility over safety. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." The backyard erupted. Lily came running, screaming with joy, throwing herself at both of them. Marcus whooped loudly. The Pattersons started clapping, and others joined in until the applause was thunderous. Lucas slid the ring onto Eleanor's finger with shaking hands, and she stared at it like she couldn't quite believe it was real. Then she grabbed his face and kissed him, right there in front of the entire neighborhood, and he kissed her back with everything he had. When they finally pulled apart, breathless and laughing, Lily was jumping up and down between them. "Does this mean Miss Eleanor's going to be my mom? For real?" Eleanor looked at Lucas, then at Lily, and smiled through her tears. "If that's okay with you." Lily's answer was to throw her arms around Eleanor's neck and hold on tight. Around them, the party resumed with new energy. People approached to offer congratulations, and while Lucas caught a few disapproving expressions in the crowd, they were vastly outnumbered by genuine well wishes. Even Mrs. Chen grudgingly admitted it was quite romantic, if unconventional. As evening fell and guests began departing, Lucas found Eleanor sitting on the porch swing, Lily asleep with her head in Eleanor's lap. He sat down beside them, and Eleanor leaned her head on his shoulder. "I can't believe you did that," she said softly. "Regret saying yes?" "Not even a little. But ask me again tomorrow when the panic sets in." Lucas laughed, wrapping his arm around her. "I'll ask you every day if I have to. You really think we can do this? Make this work?" "I know we can." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "We already are." Eleanor woke the next morning to the weight of the ring on her finger and a moment of pure panic so intense she couldn't breathe. She sat up in bed, staring at the diamond catching the early light, and her mind began cataloging every terrible possibility with ruthless efficiency. What had she done? What had she agreed to? Marriage. She'd said yes to marriage in front of the entire neighborhood, in front of Lily, in front of everyone who would now hold her accountable to this impossible promise. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Lucas. "Morning. How's the panic level today? Scale of 1 to 10. Despite everything, she smiled. He knew her too well already. She typed back, 15, maybe 20. His response came immediately. "Want me to come over?" "No, yes, I don't know, I'm coming over." Eleanor dragged herself out of bed and pulled on a robe, barely making it to the coffee maker before her doorbell rang. Lucas stood on the porch with 2 cups from the coffee shop downtown and an understanding expression that made her want to cry. "Didn't sleep much, did you?" he asked, following her inside. "How can you tell? You're wearing your robe inside out." Eleanor looked down and groaned. Sure enough, the tag was sticking out at her throat. "This is a sign, a clear sign that I'm not mentally prepared for any of this. It's a sign that you were too distracted to check your robe." Lucas handed her a coffee, extra strong, the way she liked it. "Talk to me. What's going through your head?" "Everything. All of it. All at once." Eleanor sank onto the couch, cradling the cup like a lifeline. "Lucas, we got engaged yesterday. Engaged. Do you understand how insane that is? 6 weeks ago, I told you to stop flirting with me. 4 weeks ago, I was convinced we were a terrible idea. And now we're getting married? Only if you still want to." "Of course I want to. That's the problem." She set down the coffee before she spilled it. "I want this so much it terrifies me, because what if I'm not ready? What if I can't be what you need? What Lily needs. What if I wake up every morning in a panic like this for the rest of our lives? Lucas sat beside her, taking her trembling hands. Then we'll deal with it. Eleanor, I didn't propose because I think you're perfect, or because I expect you to magically stop being afraid. I proposed because I love you. Anxiety, panic attacks, and all. But what about Lily? She's already calling me her mom in her head. What if I let her down? You won't. You don't know that. You're right, I don't. But I know you, and I know you'd walk through fire before you'd hurt that little girl. That's enough for me. Eleanor leaned into him, closing her eyes. I found Daniel's letter this morning, the one I told you about. I put it in a box in my closet, hadn't looked at it in years. But today I needed to read it again. What did it say? That love isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and choosing love anyway. Her voice cracked. He wrote that the measure of courage isn't never feeling scared. It's feeling terrified and still showing up. Lucas pressed a kiss to her forehead. Sounds like a smart man. He was, and he'd like you, I think. You're both stubborn as hell. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking their coffee as morning light filled the room. Finally, Eleanor spoke again. I want to do this right. For Lily's sake, for ours. I think we should talk to someone. A therapist, maybe. Someone who can help us navigate all of this. Okay, we can do that. And I want to take things slow with the wedding planning. I know I said yes in front of everyone, but I need time to adjust to this. To wrap my head around actually getting married again. How much time do you need? Eleanor thought about it. 6 months? Maybe a year? Is that okay? Eleanor, you could ask for 10 years and I'd wait. This isn't a race. Relief flooded through her. Thank you for being patient, for understanding. Always. He stood, pulling her up with him. Now get dressed properly. Tag inside this time, because Lily's been texting me since 6 a.m. asking when she can come over to look at your ring again. Eleanor laughed despite herself. She texted you at 6 a.m.? She's been awake since 5, apparently. Too excited to sleep. She's already planned your entire wedding, by the way. It involves approximately 400 butterflies and a unicorn. Only 1 unicorn? I'm disappointed. Sorry, my mistake. 4 unicorns. And they all have to be rainbow-colored. The mental image made Eleanor smile genuinely for the first time that morning. Well, I guess we better start looking for rainbow unicorns then. Later that day, after Lily had indeed come over to examine the ring from every angle and declare it the most beautiful thing in the whole entire world, Eleanor found herself sitting in her garden with a cup of tea, trying to process everything that had changed in 24 hours. Her phone rang. Her mother. Eleanor briefly considered not answering, but that would only delay the inevitable. Hi, Mom. Eleanor Hayes, did you get engaged yesterday and not tell your own mother? So the gossip network had reached Seattle. Of course it had. How did you find out? Mrs. Chen called her sister, who called her daughter, who called me. Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to learn about your daughter's engagement through the neighborhood gossip chain? I'm sorry. It all happened very fast. Apparently. Eleanor, you barely mentioned this man before, and now you're marrying him. And he's younger than you? What are you thinking? Eleanor felt her defenses rise. I'm thinking I'm in love, Mom. I'm thinking I deserve to be happy. Of course you deserve to be happy, but this seems impulsive, reckless even. You're not a teenager anymore. You can't just, I'm 38 years old. I think I'm old enough to make my own decisions about my life. Her mother sighed, the disappointed sound Eleanor had heard countless times growing up. I just don't want to see you get hurt again. After Daniel, you were so broken. It took years for you to even resemble yourself again. And this man has a child, Eleanor. That's a huge responsibility. Her name is Lily, and she's wonderful. I'm sure she is. But are you ready to be a mother? You and Daniel never had children. You don't know what you're signing up for. The words hit harder than her mother probably intended. Eleanor had wanted children with Daniel, desperately. They'd been trying when he died. Another loss she'd had to grieve. I know it won't be easy, Eleanor said quietly, but Lucas and Lily are worth it. I hope you're right. I really do. But Eleanor, promise me you'll think this through. Don't rush into something just because you're afraid of being alone. I'm not afraid of being alone, Mom. I've been alone for 5 years. I'm afraid of missing out on something real because I'm too scared to take a chance. After the call ended, Eleanor sat staring at her phone, her mother's doubts echoing in her head. They were the same doubts she'd been wrestling with herself, but hearing them voiced out loud made them feel more real, more legitimate. Was she being reckless? Was this all happening too fast? A knock on the fence made her look up. Mr. Peterson stood at the gate, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. "Mind if I come in?" he asked. Eleanor gestured to the bench beside her. "Of course." The old man settled with a grunt, his joints creaking. They sat in silence for a moment before he spoke. "My wife was 6 years older than me. Did I mention that yesterday?" "You might have." "Everyone had opinions about it. Her parents thought she was robbing the cradle. My friend said I was only interested in her money, which was ridiculous. She was a school teacher, barely made enough to scrape by. But people love to talk, especially about things they don't understand." Eleanor waited, sensing he had more to say. "We were married for 47 years before she passed. Best years of my life, every single one of them. Even the hard ones, the ones where money was tight, or we fought about stupid things, or life threw us curveballs. All of it was worth it because I got to spend it with her." His eyes were distant, lost in memory. "The age thing? It mattered for about 5 minutes until we realized we didn't care what anyone else thought. What mattered was that we made each other laugh, that we supported each other's dreams, that we chose each other every single day." He turned to look at Eleanor directly. "I saw how that young man looked at you yesterday, like you hung the moon and stars, and I saw how you looked at him, terrified but willing to jump anyway. That's love, Eleanor. Real love, the kind worth fighting for." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "What if I mess it up?" "Then you'll fix it. That's what commitment means. It's not about being perfect. It's about staying even when things get hard." He patted her hand awkwardly. "Don't let fear cheat you out of happiness. I spent too many years watching you hide in this house, and it broke my heart. You deserve this. Let yourself have it." After he left, Eleanor sat in her garden until the sun began setting, thinking about his words. About her mother's concerns, about Lucas's unwavering support, about Lily's joy, about Daniel's letter, still sitting on her dresser, reminding her that love required courage. She pulled out her phone and texted Lucas. "Can you come over tonight? After Lily's in bed? Everything okay?" "Yes. I just need to see you." He arrived at 9, concern etched on his face. Eleanor led him to the living room where she'd laid out Daniel's letter on the coffee table. "I want you to read this," she said. "I want you to understand what you're getting into. Who I was, who I'm still trying to become." Lucas picked up the worn paper carefully, reading in silence. Eleanor watched his face, seeing emotion flicker across it: sadness, understanding, determination. When he finished, he set it down gently. "He loved you very much." "Yes. And he'd want you to be happy." "That's what the letter says." But Lucas, reading it again made me realize something. I've been so focused on being afraid that I'd lose you the way I lost him, I never stopped to consider what I'd be losing if I pushed you away. She moved to sit beside him, taking his hands. "I talked to my mom today. She thinks we're being reckless. Mr. Peterson came by and told me we're doing the right thing. I've had a dozen different people share their opinions, and all of it just created more noise in my head." "What do you want, Eleanor? Not what anyone else thinks. What do you want?" "I want to stop being afraid. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to help Lily with her homework and fight with you about whose turn it is to do dishes and build a life that's messy and real and ours." She squeezed his hands. "I want all of it, Lucas, even the scary parts." "Then that's what we'll do, together." I made an appointment with a therapist. For me, for us as a couple, and eventually for all 3 of us with Lily. I want to do this right. "When's the first appointment?" "Thursday afternoon. I know it's short notice. I'll be there." He pulled her into his arms. "Eleanor, I meant what I said yesterday. I'm all in. Whatever you need, however long it takes, I'm here." She buried her face in his chest, breathing in his familiar scent. "I don't deserve you." "Yeah, you do. You just don't believe it yet. But you will. I'll make sure of it." The following weeks fell into a new rhythm. Eleanor went to therapy twice a week, once alone, once with Lucas. She talked about Daniel, about grief, about her fear of loss. She worked through the guilt she felt for moving on, for finding happiness again. Slowly, painfully, she began to forgive herself for surviving. The couple's therapy was harder in some ways. It forced them to confront questions they'd been avoiding. How would they blend their lives? Where would they live? What role would Eleanor play in Lily's life? How would they handle Jessica if she ever decided to become more involved? But it also gave them tools to communicate, to navigate conflict, to build a foundation strong enough to support the life they were trying to create. Lily adjusted with the resilience of childhood, though she had her own questions and fears. Why had her real mom left? Would Eleanor leave too? Was it okay to love both of them? The family therapist helped them navigate these conversations with patience and care, and gradually Lily's anxiety eased. The neighborhood gossip eventually died down, replaced by new scandals and dramas. Mrs. Chen actually apologized one day, admitting that seeing Lucas and Eleanor's commitment had made her reconsider her judgments. The Davidsons invited them over for dinner. Even the skeptical parents from Lily's school warmed up when they saw how happy and well-adjusted Lily remained. But not everything was smooth. There were still hard days. The day Eleanor found an old photo album and spent 3 hours crying over pictures of Daniel. Lucas came home to find her on the floor, surrounded by memories, and he'd sat down beside her and let her grieve without trying to fix it. The day Lily had a meltdown because she missed Jessica and screamed at Eleanor that she wasn't her real mom and never would be. Eleanor had locked herself in the bathroom afterwards, devastated, until Lucas coaxed her out and reminded her that kids say hurtful things when they're hurting. The day Eleanor's furnace finally died completely, and she had a panic attack about money and dependence and what it meant to let Lucas help her. They'd fought for the first time, really fought, about pride and partnership and what it meant to be a team. But they worked through each crisis, sometimes gracefully, often messily, but always together. 3 months after the engagement, Lucas brought up the idea of combining households. "It doesn't make sense to maintain 2 houses," he said over dinner at his place. Lily was at a friend's house, giving them rare time alone. "We're together every night anyway. We're just sleeping in different houses and pretending we're taking it slow." Eleanor had been expecting this conversation, dreading it, and wanting it in equal measure. "Which house would we keep?" "I was thinking yours. It's bigger, better layout, and your garden is already established. We could rent mine out, use the income to offset costs." "That's practical." "But," Lucas knew her well enough to hear the hesitation, "but moving in together feels so permanent, so final." "Eleanor, we're engaged. It is permanent and final. That's kind of the point." "I know, what if living together full-time is different? What if you realize I'm unbearable in the mornings? Or I hate how you load the dishwasher? Or then we'll figure it out, like we figure out everything else." Lucas reached across the table for her hand. "But I think we're ready for this. Don't you?" Eleanor thought about it, about how empty her house felt when they weren't there, about how right it felt when Lily's artwork covered her refrigerator and Lucas's tools cluttered her garage, about how much she wanted to stop saying goodbye at the end of every evening. "Yeah," she said finally. "I think we're ready." The move happened over a weekend in June, with help from Marcus and the Pattersons. It was chaos. Boxes everywhere, furniture that didn't quite fit, arguments about where things should go. Lily claimed the largest bedroom upstairs and immediately started decorating it with posters and fairy lights. Lucas's stuff took over the garage. Eleanor's books multiplied across every surface. But by Sunday evening, when they collapsed onto the couch together, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, it felt like home. "We did it," Lucas said, pulling Eleanor close. "We survived anyway." "Same thing." He kissed the top of her head. "How's the panic level?" "Surprisingly low. Maybe a 3? That's progress." Lily thundered down the stairs, still wired despite the long day. "Can we have pancakes for breakfast tomorrow? All together in our house?" "Our house." Eleanor felt something warm bloom in her chest. "Absolutely." "And can I help Miss Eleanor in the garden after school this week?" "If Miss Eleanor wants help." Eleanor smiled. "I always want help." After Lily finally went to bed, exhausted from excitement, Eleanor and Lucas stood in the kitchen unpacking dishes. It was domestic and mundane and absolutely perfect. "Thank you," Eleanor said suddenly. Lucas looked up from the box he was working on. "For what?" for not giving up on me, for pushing when I needed pushing and backing off when I needed space, for making me believe this was possible. You did the hard work, Eleanor. All I did was show up. That's not a small thing, showing up. She set down the plate she was holding and moved into his arms. I love you. I don't say it enough, but I do. So much it scares me sometimes. I love you too. He tilted her chin up to kiss her softly. And we're going to be okay. Better than okay. Promise? Promise. That night, lying in bed in their house, Eleanor stared at the ceiling and took stock of her life. 6 months ago, she'd been alone, convinced that was her fate. Now she had a fiancé sleeping beside her, a little girl down the hall who called her mom, and a future that stretched out full of possibility instead of emptiness. It wasn't perfect. She still had bad days, still struggled with anxiety and grief and doubt, but she also had support, love, and the courage to keep choosing happiness even when it was terrifying. The next morning brought rain, heavy and persistent. Eleanor woke to find Lucas already up, the smell of coffee and pancakes drifting from the kitchen. She pulled on a robe and padded downstairs to find him and Lily working together, making a mess of the batter but laughing. You're supposed to be sleeping in, Lucas said when he saw her. We were bringing you breakfast in bed. I heard giggling, couldn't stay away. Eleanor kissed Lily's syrup-sticky cheek, then Lucas's lips. This is nice. This is life now, Lucas said. Better get used to it. Eleanor looked around at the cluttered kitchen, the breakfast chaos, the family she'd never expected to have. I think I already am. Weeks turned into months, and summer gave way to fall. They settled into routines, learned each other's rhythms, figured out how to be a family. There were growing pains, territorial disputes over bathroom time, disagreements about parenting approaches, moments when the differences in their backgrounds created friction. But there was also joy. Lily's parent-teacher conference, where Eleanor sat beside Lucas as an equal partner. The Halloween where they all dressed as characters from Lily's favorite book. The quiet evenings in the garden, the three of them working in comfortable silence. Eleanor's relationship with Lily deepened in ways she'd never anticipated. She learned to braid hair and help with math homework. She attended soccer games and school performances. She learned the delicate balance of being a parental figure without trying to replace Jessica, who still called occasionally but remained largely absent from Lily's life. One evening in October, Lily came to Eleanor's study where she was grading papers. Can I ask you something? Lily's voice was small, uncertain. Eleanor set down her pen. Of course, sweetie. What's on your mind? At school today, we had to draw family trees, and I didn't know what to put for you. Eleanor's heart clenched. What do you mean? Well, my mom is my mom, but you're also kind of my mom, but different? I don't know what to call you. Eleanor pulled Lily onto her lap, choosing her words carefully. Your mom will always be your mom. Nothing changes that. But families can have more than one person in each role. I'm your stepmom, or I will be when your dad and I get married. But that sounds so formal, like from Cinderella. Eleanor laughed despite the emotion clogging her throat. You're right, it does. What would you like to call me? Lily was quiet for a long moment. Can I just call you Mom, like my other mom? The question hit Eleanor with unexpected force. She'd been preparing for this, knew it might come eventually, but hearing it still took her breath away. Are you sure? That's a big decision. I'm sure. You do all the mom things. You help with homework and make my lunch and come to my games. You tuck me in at night and read me stories. You're my mom, just a different kind than the mom who left. Eleanor hugged her tight, tears streaming down her face. Then yes, sweetheart, I would be honored if you called me Mom. Even though I already have one? Hearts are big enough for more than one person. Love doesn't run out just because you share it. Eleanor pulled back to look at Lily seriously. But if you ever want to change your mind, that's okay too. This is your choice. Lily nodded, satisfied. Then she wiggled out of Eleanor's lap and returned to the door. Okay. Thanks, Mom. The word landed like a gift, precious and fragile. Eleanor sat alone in her study for a long time after, crying happy tears and missing Daniel and feeling grateful and terrified all at once. When Lucas came home from work, she told him about the conversation. He pulled her into his arms and held her while she cried. "That's huge," he said softly. "How do you feel about it?" "Overwhelmed, honored, scared I'm going to mess it up." "You won't. And if you do, we'll fix it together." He kissed her temple. "You're already a better mother to her than Jessica ever was." "That's not fair to Jessica. She's struggling with things we don't understand." "You're too generous, even to people who don't deserve it." Eleanor thought about that. About generosity, about grace, about the choice to love even when it was hard. Someone once told me that love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up. I'm just trying to show up. And you do. Every single day. That night, Eleanor pulled out Daniel's letter again. She'd been reading it less frequently, no longer needing its reassurance as desperately, but tonight she wanted to touch base with the past, to acknowledge how far she'd come. She read the familiar words, hearing Daniel's voice in every line. When she reached the end, she found herself talking to him in her mind the way she used to in the early days of grief. "I'm getting married again, to a good man with a beautiful daughter who I already love more than I thought possible. I think you'd like him. I think you'd be happy for me." She touched the letter gently. "I'm keeping my promise. I'm living, really living, and it's scary and wonderful and more than I ever thought I'd have again. Thank you for giving me permission to try." She folded the letter carefully and placed it in the memory box where she kept Daniel's wedding ring, photos, and other precious remnants of their life together. It would always be part of her story, but it no longer defined her entire narrative. The holidays approached, bringing new challenges and joys. Eleanor's parents came to visit for Thanksgiving, her mother still skeptical but trying. Watching Eleanor with Lily and Lucas seemed to soften something in her, though, and by the end of the weekend she pulled Eleanor aside. "I was wrong," she admitted, "about this being a mistake. I can see how happy you are, how happy all of you are together." "Thank you, Mom. That little girl adores you, and he looks at you like you're the most precious thing in the world." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "Daniel would approve. I really believe that." The words were a benediction Eleanor hadn't known she needed. She hugged her mother tight, feeling another piece of her fear fall away. Christmas was chaotic and perfect. Lily had specific ideas about decorating that involved approximately 7 million ornaments and enough tinsel to supply a small parade. Lucas built a fire every evening, and they'd sit together watching the tree lights while Lily chattered about Santa and wishes and magic. On Christmas morning, after presents were opened and breakfast demolished, Eleanor found Lucas in the kitchen cleaning up wrapping paper. "Hey," she said, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "I've been thinking." "Dangerous." She swatted his shoulder. "I've been thinking about the wedding, about timing." Lucas turned to face her, studying her expression. "Yeah? I don't want to wait anymore. I thought I needed a year, maybe longer. But I'm ready now. I want to marry you, Lucas. Soon." His face broke into a huge smile. "How soon? Spring? March or April, maybe? Something small, just family and close friends, in the garden if the weather cooperates?" "You're serious." "Completely serious. Unless you need more time." He kissed her, cutting off the words. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I've been ready since the day I met you. Let's do it." They told Lily that afternoon, and her shriek of excitement probably alerted the entire neighborhood. She immediately began planning, pulling out notebooks and markers to sketch dress designs and flower arrangements with the seriousness of a professional wedding coordinator. Eleanor watched her, this little girl who'd become her daughter in every way that mattered, and felt her heart swell with love so fierce it almost hurt. This was her family now, imperfect, complicated, built from pieces of broken pasts and stitched together with courage and hope. It wasn't the life she'd imagined when she married Daniel, or the one she'd resigned herself to after his death. It was better. Different, but better. Because it was real and present and hers. Lucas squeezed her hand, and when she looked up at him, she saw her own wonder reflected in his eyes. "We're really doing this," she said. "Yeah, we really are." And for the first time in years, Eleanor felt nothing but joy. January brought cold rain and wedding planning that consumed every spare moment. Eleanor had imagined something simple, but even simple weddings required endless decisions. Flowers or no flowers? Sit-down dinner or buffet?
Traditional vows or personal? The questions multiplied like rabbits, and some nights Eleanor lay awake overwhelmed by details that shouldn't matter but somehow did. "We could elope," Lucas suggested one evening after a particularly frustrating conversation with a caterer who'd quoted prices that made Eleanor's head spin. "Just the three of us. Go to the courthouse, make it official, skip all this stress." Eleanor was tempted, so tempted. But then she thought about Lily's notebooks full of wedding sketches, about her mother flying in from Seattle, about the neighborhood that had watched their entire journey unfold. "No," she said finally, "I want to do this right. I want to stand in front of the people who matter and promise to love you for the rest of my life. I just wish it wasn't so complicated." "Then let's uncomplicate it." Lucas pulled out his phone and started typing. What do we actually need? Not what we think we should have. What do we actually need? Eleanor thought about it. Each other. Lily. Our closest people. That's it. Okay, so we pick a date, we get a marriage license, we stand in the garden, and we say our vows. Everything else is optional. It sounded so simple when he said it like that. Eleanor felt tension drain from her shoulders. "You make it seem easy." "Because it is easy. We're the ones making it hard." He pulled her onto his lap. "Eleanor, I don't care if we get married in jeans in our backyard or in a cathedral with 500 guests. All I care about is that at the end of the day, you're my wife. Jeans might be pushing it, but I like the backyard part." They settled on April 15th, a Saturday that according to the weather pattern should be mild and dry. The guest list stayed small. Marcus and a few close friends, Eleanor's parents, Lucas's mother, the Pattersons, Mr. Peterson, a handful of teachers from Eleanor's school. 20 people maximum. Lily would be the flower girl, a role she took so seriously she practiced walking with a basket of fake petals every evening. February tested them in unexpected ways. Jessica called out of nowhere, asking to visit Lily. It was the first time she'd shown interest in months, and the request threw everyone into confusion. "What do I tell her?" Lucas asked Eleanor after hanging up, his face troubled. "The truth, that Lily would probably like to see her." Eleanor's stomach churned at the thought, but she forced herself to sound calm. "She's still Lily's mother, Lucas. We can't deny her that. She abandoned her." "I know, but she's trying now. We have to let her try." Jessica arrived on a Saturday afternoon in late February, driving up in a sleek car that screamed of Seattle's success. She was beautiful in that polished, professional way that made Eleanor feel suddenly frumpy in her gardening jeans and old sweater. Lily had been excited all morning, but when Jessica actually appeared, she went shy, hiding behind Lucas's legs. "Hey, baby girl," Jessica said, crouching down. "You've gotten so big." "I'm 8 3/4 now," Lily said quietly. "I know. I'm sorry I missed your birthday." Jessica glanced at Eleanor, something complicated in her expression. "You must be Eleanor. I've heard a lot about you." "All good things, I hope." Eleanor extended her hand, determined to be gracious, even though her heart was hammering. Jessica shook it briefly. "Lily talks about you in every phone call, and Mom did this. Mom helped me with that." I wasn't sure who she meant at first. The words landed like a slap, though Eleanor couldn't tell if Jessica meant them that way. Lucas stepped forward, his hand finding Eleanor's. "Eleanor's been wonderful with Lily. She's part of our family now." "I can see that." Jessica's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Could I take Lily for ice cream, just the two of us? I'd like to catch up." Lucas looked at Lily, who nodded hesitantly. "Okay, but we need her back by 5. We have dinner plans." After they left, Eleanor sank onto the porch steps, her hands shaking. Lucas sat beside her, pulling her close. "That was harder than I expected," she admitted. "You did great." "I felt like an interloper, like I was stepping on her territory." "You're not. Lily chose to call you Mom. Jessica's had years to be present, and she wasn't. This is on her, not you." But the words didn't ease the knot in Eleanor's stomach. What if Jessica wanted more time with Lily? What if she decided she wanted to be a real mother again? Where would that leave Eleanor? When Lily returned at 5 sharp, she was quiet, picking at her dinner and avoiding eye contact. After bath time, Eleanor found her sitting on her bed, hugging her stuffed rabbit. "Want to talk about it?" Eleanor asked gently, sitting beside her. She wants me to come visit her in Seattle for spring break. Eleanor's heart sank, but she kept her voice neutral. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Lily's eyes filled with tears. She's my mom. I should want to see her, but I don't know her anymore. And what if she gets mad that I call you mom now? Oh, sweetheart, Eleanor pulled her close. Your birth mom will always be your birth mom. Nothing changes that. But having more than one person who loves you isn't a bad thing. It just means you're lucky enough to have lots of people who care. But what if she makes me choose between her and you? Then we'll figure it out together. Your dad and I will never make you choose. And if your birth mom loves you the way I think she does, she won't either. Eleanor wiped Lily's tears with her thumb. It's okay to have complicated feelings. It's okay to love both of us differently. Do you promise you won't leave? Even if my birth mom comes back more? The question broke Eleanor's heart. I promise. I'm not going anywhere, Lily. No matter what. Later that night, after Lily finally fell asleep, Eleanor and Lucas sat up talking about Jessica's visit, about the Seattle trip, about how to navigate this new complication. Maybe we should postpone the wedding, Eleanor said quietly, until things settle down with Jessica. It might be too much for Lily to handle all at once. No, Lucas's voice was firm. We're not postponing our life because Jessica finally decided to show up. If she wants to be part of Lily's life, that's great, but she doesn't get to dictate our timeline. I just don't want Lily to feel torn. She won't, because we're going to make it clear that our family has room for Jessica too, if she wants to be part of it. But Eleanor, you are Lily's mom. You've been there for every scraped knee, every bad dream, every homework meltdown. You've earned that title. Don't let Jessica's sudden interest make you doubt that. Eleanor leaned into him, drawing strength from his certainty. I love you. I love you too. And in 2 months, I'm going to marry you in that garden you've worked so hard on, with our daughter watching, and nothing is going to stop that from happening. March arrived with the first hints of spring. The garden began waking up, buds appearing on the roses, green shoots pushing through the soil. Eleanor spent every spare moment preparing it for the wedding, planting new flowers, trimming hedges, creating the backdrop for the most important day of her life. Lily did end up going to Seattle for spring break, and the week she was gone felt hollow. Eleanor threw herself into wedding preparations to avoid thinking about it, but she jumped every time her phone rang, terrified it would be Jessica saying Lily wanted to stay. But when Lucas picked her up from the airport, Lily ran straight to Eleanor and hugged her tight. I missed you so much, Mom. I missed you too, baby. How was Seattle? It was okay. My birth mom's apartment is really fancy, but she doesn't have a garden, and she ordered takeout every night instead of cooking. And she had to work a lot even though I was visiting. Lily pulled back to look at Eleanor seriously. I like our home better. Relief flooded through Eleanor so intensely she almost cried. I'm glad you're home. Me too. Only 4 more weeks until the wedding. Did you pick the final flowers? Can I see my dress again? Did you? Eleanor laughed, the sound full of joy and relief. Yes, yes, and yes. Come on, let's go look at everything. The final weeks before the wedding passed in a blur of last-minute details and mounting excitement. Eleanor's mother arrived a week early to help, and to her credit, she threw herself into preparations without a single critical comment about the timeline or the age difference. I was wrong to judge, she told Eleanor one afternoon as they arranged centerpieces. I can see how happy you are, how happy all of you are together. That's all that matters. Thanks, Mom. Daniel would be happy for you too. I really believe that. The words were a gift Eleanor hadn't known she needed. She hugged her mother tight, feeling another piece of the past settle into place. The night before the wedding, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through everything that could go wrong. What if it rained? What if she tripped walking down the makeshift aisle? What if she couldn't get through her vows without crying? What if this was all a mistake and she woke up tomorrow realizing she'd been fooling herself? Around 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and wandered downstairs. To her surprise, she found Lucas in the kitchen making tea. Couldn't sleep either, she asked. Too excited. He poured her a cup and they sat at the table together. Having second thoughts? About marrying you? Never. About everything else? Constantly. Lucas smiled. That sounds about right. Eleanor, can I tell you something? Always.
A year ago, I thought I had my life figured out, just me and Lily making it work, and that was enough. I'd convinced myself I didn't need anything else. And then you moved in next door and turned everything upside down. Sorry about that. Don't be. You gave me something I didn't even know I was missing.
You gave Lily a mother who actually shows up. You gave us both a partner, a teammate, someone who makes everything better just by being there. He reached across the table for her hand. Tomorrow, when I watch you walk toward me in that garden, I'm going to be the luckiest man alive. And I need you to know that. No doubts, no fears. Just absolute certainty that you are the best thing that ever happened to me. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears.
How do you always know exactly what to say? Years of practice. Also, I'm deeply in love with you, which helps. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking tea and holding hands, until the sky began lightening with dawn. Then Lucas stood, pulling Eleanor up with him. We should try to get a few hours of sleep. Big day ahead. Biggest day. He kissed her softly. See you at the altar, future Mrs. Reed. I'm keeping my name, remember? Future Mrs. Hayes Reed, then. Or Ms.
Hayes, who's married to Mr. Reed, whatever makes you happy. Eleanor laughed, the sound full of love and anticipation. You make me happy. That's all I need. April 15th dawned clear and perfect, the kind of spring day that Portland was famous for. The garden looked like something from a fairy tale, roses in full bloom, the grass emerald green, sunlight filtering through the trees in golden shafts. Eleanor spent the morning getting ready with her mother and Lily, the three of them crammed into the bathroom doing hair and makeup. Lily was vibrating with excitement, her flower girl dress making her feel like a princess. You look beautiful, Mom, she said as Eleanor finished putting on her simple white dress. It wasn't fancy, tea-length lace sleeves, nothing dramatic, but when Eleanor looked in the mirror, she saw a woman who was happy, healthy, and ready for the future.
You look beautiful too, sweetheart. Do you think my birth mom will be mad she wasn't invited? Eleanor knelt down to Lily's level. We sent her an invitation. She chose not to come. That's her decision, not ours. Today is about celebrating our family, you, me, and your dad. Okay? Okay. Lily threw her arms around Eleanor's neck. I'm so glad you're going to be my mom forever. Me too, baby. Me too. Downstairs, guests were gathering in the garden.
The chairs were filled with the people who mattered most. Marcus in his best suit, looking uncharacteristically serious, the Pattersons beaming with pride, Mr. Peterson dabbing at his eyes with a handkerchief, Eleanor's father looking dignified despite his obvious emotion, Lucas's mother crying happy tears. And at the end of the aisle, beneath an arch covered in roses, stood Lucas. He wore a dark suit that Eleanor had never seen before, and when he saw her appear at the back door, his face transformed with an expression of such love and wonder that she felt her knees go weak. Lily went first, scattering rose petals with careful precision, her face serious with concentration. When she reached the end, she gave Lucas a big thumbs up that made everyone laugh. Then it was Eleanor's turn. Her father offered his arm, and together they walked down the aisle toward the man who'd had the courage to keep trying when she'd kept running, who'd loved her through her fear and doubt, who'd shown her that second chances were real. When they reached Lucas, her father kissed her cheek and whispered, "Be happy, sweetheart. You deserve this."
I know, Dad. Finally, I know. Lucas took her hands, and the officiant, a judge who was a friend of Marcus's, began speaking.
But Eleanor barely heard the words. She was too focused on Lucas's face, on the tears streaming down his cheeks, on the promise in his eyes. When it came time for vows, Lucas went first. Eleanor, when you moved in next door, I was stuck, going through the motions, convinced that surviving was enough. You showed me what it means to really live. You're brave and strong and so much kinder than you give yourself credit for. You love Lily like she's your own. You challenge me to be better. You make me laugh even when I want to stay frustrated. You're my best friend, my partner, and the love of my life. His voice cracked. I promise to choose you every single day, to support your dreams and hold you through your fears, to be patient when you're struggling and celebrate when you're thriving, to love you exactly as you are, for exactly as long as we both shall live. Eleanor was crying openly now, not even trying to stop the tears. She'd written her vows down, afraid she'd forget them. But looking at Lucas now, the paper in her hand seemed inadequate. She set it aside and spoke from her heart. Lucas, for 5 years I was convinced my story was over, that I'd had my one great love and lost him, and that was all I got. You proved me wrong. You showed me that hearts can heal, that love can bloom again, that it's never too late for new beginnings. She squeezed his hands. You didn't try to replace what I lost. You created something new, something uniquely ours. You gave me a family when I thought I'd always be alone. You gave Lily a father who shows up every single day. You gave me permission to hope again. She paused, her voice thick with emotion. I promise to be brave enough to love you fully, even when it scares me, to trust you with my heart and my fears, to be the partner you deserve and the mother Lily needs, to choose us every single day through easy times and hard ones, through joy and through grief for the rest of my life. The judge pronounced them married, and Lucas pulled her into a kiss that was tender and passionate and full of promise. Around them, their guests erupted in applause and cheers, but Eleanor barely heard it. She was too focused on this moment, on the man who was now her husband, on the life they were building together. When they finally pulled apart, Lily crashed into both of them, wrapping her arms around their waists. We're a real family now, she announced loudly. Forever and ever. Forever and ever, Eleanor agreed, one arm around her daughter, the other around her husband, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. The reception was exactly what they'd wanted, casual, warm, full of laughter. They ate good food and danced to music from someone's phone speaker, and toasted with champagne that Marcus had splurged on. Mr. Peterson gave a speech about love and second chances that left everyone crying. Eleanor's mother shared embarrassing stories from Eleanor's childhood. Lucas's mom welcomed Eleanor to the family with words so heartfelt that Eleanor had to excuse herself to cry in the bathroom for a few minutes. As the sun began setting, painting the garden in shades of gold and pink, Eleanor found herself standing alone for a moment, watching her new family. Lucas was dancing with Lily, spinning her around while she giggled. Marcus was attempting to teach the Pattersons some complicated dance move. Her parents were chatting with Lucas's mother, looking genuinely happy. She felt a presence beside her and turned to find Mr. Peterson. Beautiful ceremony, he said. Thank you, and thank you for everything you said to me months ago, about choosing love over fear. I don't think I could have done this without that conversation. You would have figured it out. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for. He patted her hand. My Ellen would have liked you. She always said the bravest thing a person can do is try again after their heart's been broken. You did that. Be proud of it. After he walked away, Eleanor stood in her garden, the garden she'd poured her heart into, that had witnessed her grief and her healing and now her joy, and felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. She thought about Daniel, about the letter he'd written asking her to live fully. She'd kept that promise today. She'd chosen love over fear, hope over despair, possibility over safety. Hey, wife, Lucas said, appearing beside her and wrapping his arms around her waist. You okay? Better than okay. Perfect, actually. She leaned back into him. How did we get here? From neighbors who barely spoke to this? You stopped running. I stopped giving up. We met in the middle. Best decision I ever made. Second best. The first best was saying yes when I proposed in front of the entire neighborhood. Eleanor laughed, turning in his arms to face him. That was pretty spectacular, I'll admit. I have my moments. He kissed her softly. Ready for the rest of our lives? With you? Absolutely. They danced together as the stars came out, surrounded by the people they loved, in the garden that had seen them through everything. Lily eventually joined them, and they swayed together as a family, Lucas humming off-key, Lily giggling, Eleanor feeling more content than she'd ever imagined possible. Later, after the guests had gone and Lily was asleep upstairs, Eleanor and Lucas sat on the porch swing in comfortable silence. Eleanor's head rested on Lucas's shoulder, her hand in his, the ring on her finger catching the moonlight. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not giving up on me. For seeing past my fear to who I could be. For loving me enough to wait. Eleanor, you were always worth the wait. He kissed the top of her head. Besides, I'm the one who should be thankful. You took a chance on a single dad with a beat-up truck and a broken marriage in his past. You loved my daughter like your own. You made our house a home. It's easy to love Lily. She's incredible. She is. Because she has you as a mother. Lucas shifted to look at her. I know you were worried about Jessica, about whether Lily would accept you, about whether you could do this. But look at what you've built. That little girl upstairs adores you. She trusts you completely. You did that, Eleanor. You showed up every single day and earned that trust. Tears slipped down Eleanor's cheeks, but they were happy tears now. I was so scared I'd mess it up. You didn't. You won't. And even if you do sometimes, because we all do, we'll figure it out together. That's what family means. They sat in silence for a while, rocking gently on the swing, watching the moon rise over the neighborhood. Finally, Eleanor spoke again. I need to tell you something. I went to Daniel's grave yesterday. Lucas tensed slightly, but didn't pull away. Yeah? I wanted to tell him about the wedding, about you and Lily, about how happy I am. She squeezed Lucas's hand. I told him thank you, for loving me enough to set me free, for writing that letter, for giving me permission to find this. What do you think he would say about all this? Eleanor smiled. I think he'd say it's about damn time I stopped being so stubborn, and I think he'd like you. You're both stubborn in the same way, refusing to let me give up on myself. Smart man. The smartest, both of you. She turned to look at Lucas directly. I want you to know that loving you doesn't diminish what I had with him. It's not a competition. You're not a replacement. You're something entirely new, entirely yours. And I love you completely, for exactly who you are. I know, Eleanor, and I never needed to be the only person you've loved. I just needed to be the one you choose now. I do. I choose you every day, for the rest of my life. They kissed under the stars, in the garden that had witnessed their entire journey, and Eleanor felt the last piece of her past settle into peace. She would always love Daniel. She would always carry that part of her story. But she was ready now to write new chapters, to build new memories, to create a future with the man beside her and the daughter sleeping upstairs. That night, lying in bed next to her husband, Eleanor thought about everything that had brought her to this moment. The grief that had nearly destroyed her, the fear that had kept her isolated, the courage it had taken to try again, the patience Lucas had shown, the love that had grown between them, slow and steady and strong. Lucas? She whispered in the darkness. I'm not scared anymore. She felt him smile against her hair. Good, because we've got a whole life ahead of us, and it's going to be amazing. Promise? Promise. Eleanor closed her eyes, feeling safe and loved and home. Tomorrow she'd wake up as a wife and mother. Tomorrow she'd start this new chapter with all its challenges and joys. Tomorrow she'd keep choosing love over fear. But tonight, she just let herself feel grateful. For second chances. For stubborn men who didn't know when to quit. For little girls who called her mom. For gardens that bloomed even after harsh winters. For hearts that healed given enough time and care. For love that was patient enough to wait and brave enough to try. She drifted off to sleep with a smile on her face and Lucas's arms around her, dreaming of the future they would build together. One day, one choice, one moment of courage at a time. 6 months later, Eleanor stood in that same garden on a warm October afternoon, watching Lily chase butterflies between the roses that were blooming their second time that year. Lucas was beside her, his arm around her waist, and she was 4 months pregnant with the child they'd decided to try for just after the wedding. Life had a way of surprising you, she thought. A year ago she'd been alone, convinced her story was finished. Now she had more than she'd ever imagined possible. What are you thinking about? Lucas asked, sensing her mood. How lucky I am. How grateful. We're the lucky ones. No, Eleanor said, watching Lily laugh in the fading sunlight, feeling the flutter of new life inside her, standing in the arms of the man who'd taught her to hope again. We all are. All of us together. That's what makes it perfect. And as the sun set over Maple Street, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Eleanor Reed smiled and believed it completely. She'd been afraid that love would end in loss again, that taking a chance would end in heartbreak, that her broken pieces could never fit together into something whole. But standing here now, surrounded by family in a garden she'd brought back to life, Eleanor understood something she hadn't before. Love wasn't about being fearless. It was about being afraid and choosing it anyway. It was about showing up, about trying, about believing that broken things could bloom again if given enough care. It was about second chances and new beginnings and the courage to hope. And it was, in every possible way, worth the risk.